So our journey today begins on January 12th, 1992. And that is the day when the HAL 9000 artificially intelligent computer began operation in the HAL plant in Urbana, Illinois. So HAL stands for Heuristically Programmed Algorithmic Computer. And HAL is more sophisticated than things like ChatGPT. It's capable of reasoning, capable of coming up with its own goals, and so forth. And so HAL was sort of the star of this movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And we're always talking about, or we've talked before about how people anticipated a lot of the problems that we're having nowadays with artificial intelligence. And in this case, the original story on which this movie was based, written by Arthur C. Clarke, was called The Sentinel. And that was published in 1951. He actually wrote it in 1948. So he was anticipating these problems that we're having with artificial intelligence in 1948. So anyways, this is a little clip from the movie. This is my favorite movie, by the way. It inspired me to get interested in artificial intelligence. And this is two astronauts in a spaceship, and they're finding out that there may be something wrong with HAL. And maybe they need to disconnect HAL. Maybe they need to turn HAL off. And as we've seen from news reports, these artificial intelligence systems don't really like it when you want to turn them off. So I'll play a little bit of this clip. They're switching off all the microphones.
Rotate the pod, please, Hal.
HAL is that little red
Rotate the pod,
eye.
please, Hal. I don't think he can hear us.
Rotate the pod, please, Hal. Yeah, I'm sure we're okay. Well, what do you think?
I'm not sure. What do you think?
I've got a bad feeling about him.
You do?
Yeah, definitely. Don't you?
So anyways, there's HAL, that little red dot there. That's his eye. And they're talking, they think, in private about disconnecting HAL. And this is the result of that. One of the astronauts is right here in the sort of claws of this little spaceship that's part of the larger spaceship. And one of the astronauts wants to get back in. This is his conversation with HAL.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal?
Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move.
So HAL was reading lips. So now Apple is teaching Siri how to read lips.
Is that a sign? And it looks just like a HAL, right?
Well,
Oh my God.
This is appleinsider.com. They chose this illustration on purpose because of that movie. So anyways, maybe that this will, people will be able to speak to Siri without making noises. And you'll be able to sort of whisper, just mouth words to Siri. And maybe this will improve the speech recognition. I don't know. So anyways, I thought that was an interesting development. And another interesting development, Zoom is entangled in an AI privacy mess. They just changed their terms and conditions recently, and now they are going to take your video and your speech and text and everything that you transmit through Zoom and data mine it with their AI system. Now, there is a setting within Zoom now that you can access to turn that off, but you have to go find that setting. And one of the issues that you can run into with something like this is if you're in a Zoom meeting with your doctor doing telemedicine, that information is protected by law, and people aren't allowed to disclose that information without your consent. Those are what are called HIPAA laws, and the penalties for violating those HIPAA laws are very severe. I don't remember exactly what it was. I worked on a clinical trial at one point, and I had to go through HIPAA training. It may have been $100,000 or something if you violate the HIPAA laws. So Zoom has been fined before. They were fined like 85 million in 2021, I believe, for violating various privacy constraints. And so anyways, this is a pretty good article. They talk about the changes in detail and the penalties that Zoom has been subject to in the past for violating privacy. So Dominique, you may want to look at this article from zdnet.com and see if you can figure out where those settings are in Zoom. I know Zoom has 10 million settings, and
Yeah, I couldn't even figure out how to share the full entire screen until a few weeks ago. So yeah, it has a lot of very confusing wording and things, and yeah, there are millions of things.
So next, this is very interesting. I once had an office mate who had worked on a project where they would use microphones to listen to a typewriter as someone was typing.
Oh yeah.
And using that audio that came in through the microphone, they were able to determine what keys the people were pressing on the typewriter. So just by listening to someone type, they could figure out what that person was typing. And I thought, well, nobody will ever be able to do that with computers. But sure enough, somebody has come up with a way through deep learning to figure out, just by listening to your keystrokes when you're typing on your computer, what you're typing. And so I thought that was interesting, another application of artificial intelligence. Now, I know we have people who are interested in stereoscopic 3D. This is a deal. This is interesting. This tablet was introduced not too long ago for about $1,100. And it has a 3D display on it. It's glassesless, a glassesless display. And so you can look at it, and it does eye tracking. It figures out where you are and where your eyes are, and it automatically adjusts the display to feed a separate image to your left eye and to your right eye so that you can perceive 3D in the tablet surface. And so you can display 3D images on it. It will also take 2D images and convert them to 3D for you. Nothing's perfect, but they give it a shot. And so it's an interesting product. And so they're selling it at B&H for $650 versus $1,100. I have never seen this deep of a discount on it before, and it hasn't been available for that long. So maybe that's not a good sign. Maybe it's not selling very well. I know I've been to meetings within the 3D community where people have been very interested in it. The thing about it, as far as I'm concerned, I'm very much into the specs of display devices. And, you know, this is decent. It's an IPS type of display. It has a special backlight, and that's the way that they're able to channel the separate view to the left and right eye, which is, you know, sort of interesting technology. 12.4 inches, so that's sort of cool. 2560 by 1600 resolution, that's pretty cool. 16:10 aspect ratio, so it's a little bit taller than the regular 16:9 aspect ratio, so you get a little bit of extra real estate on there. It has decent brightness, 120 hertz refresh rate, which is pretty good. But here's the thing that sort of bothers me. You know, I'm sort of a connoisseur of displays. 1200 to 1 contrast ratio, that's not so good. For example, if you have an OLED display, you have basically an infinite contrast ratio. And so that just an OLED display really is jaw-dropping. This is not going to be so jaw-dropping. So it's interesting. And for $650, that's quite a price break. I'm a 3D addict, but I probably would not buy it myself. But I mean, for a lot of people, I know certainly a lot of people in the 3D community, they would snap them up at $649. But if you want to compare this with something like the Apple Vision Pro headset, this is nothing. Just as comparison, and one of the reasons I'm so excited about the Apple Vision Pro headset is it has 4K instead of a 2.5K pixel display. It has two 4K displays that for one for each eye. And so actually this 250 or 2560 horizontal display, I think that this resolution actually gets split in half. So I think this probably ends up being something closer to 1300 pixels per eye versus the 4000 pixels per eye that the Apple headset gives you. Plus the Apple headset is uses OLED displays, so they have that infinite aspect ratio. They also have very, very vibrant colors because each pixel has its own red, green, and blue LED, organic light emitting diode inside of it. So, and because your eyeball is so close to the display, it's very bright as well. So, for example, the Vision Pro just beats all heck out of this. But anyways, you know, that's $3,500. This is $649. There's also that Asus laptop that I've mentioned before, the 3D laptop. It's very interesting, but it hasn't come out yet. It was supposed to be out, I believe, in June. And here we are in August, and that laptop still hasn't come out yet. They've come out with the 3D version, and this store, B&H, they have a demo model of that Asus 3D laptop in their store. But the 3D version of that laptop is not yet for sale. So, by the way, these guys, Leia, they're the same ones who came up with the 3D display and camera on the Hydrogen 1 red phone, which came out a few years ago. And I had one of those. It was okay, but it had an LCD display instead of an OLED display. And so it just didn't have that spark, that dazzling aspect of the OLED displays, what they have. So anyways, that's everything that I have this week. So I'll stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, I do think that this is a very cool, I mean, the Siri things and yeah, now with AI, everything seems very convenient, but in another way that we will lose a lot of things, privacy.
Well, I think we've got a ways to go before we get HAL 9000 like artificial intelligence. It's funny, that movie came out in 1968. So that movie is 55 years old. It looks like it was shot yesterday, but that's 55 years old. The Matrix movie is 24 years old. So people have been thinking about these things for a long time, and these things that we think as sort of, you know, leading edge types of thoughts of movies and so forth. Actually, people have been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and we're just getting sort of the hardware available nowadays to implement these kinds of things. But still, we don't have the level of artificial intelligence of that 1968 movie or the Matrix, that 1999 movie either. So we're still, I think the thing that's true when you're trying to develop bleeding edge technology is that you don't know what you don't know. So everything always ends up taking longer than you expect because you run into all these problems that you didn't anticipate.
So I do agree, and today I want to share the news that is very interesting. Okay, so the first one is this woman tried to warn us about AI. So about AI, I think the inclusion is very important. Diversity is important because if you see this news, it talks about someone graduate from Stanford. She studied electronical engineering and also have both bachelor and master degrees in this field. Later on, she start diving and she feels like there won't be some issues here.
Her background, by the way, is very similar to mine. But go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the difference is that she's a woman and she was born and raised in Ethiopia. So she's a Black woman. And then she found out that, for example, if she went to the AI conference, there's only 5 to 6 Black people out of thousands of attendees in that conference. So which means that Black people's voice, if in the mainstream types of AI design development, Black people's voice will be very small compared with the mainstream. So he found out that, how about LGBT, these types of more like a small group of people, their voice might not be heard due to these types of large language model. So those will be generated and designed by more like mainstream, such as white people and more male dominant. So he said that they look, the woman and 6 other colleagues look at the news at the way this LLMS, how they train the materials, including Wikipedia, Twitter, and Reddit, which reflect back bias, reinforce kind of a lot of prejudice. Less than 15% of Wikipedia contributors were women or girls, so only 15%. And also 34% of Twitter users were women, so only 30, so 1/3, and 67% of Redditors were men. So more men dominant in these types of social data that train for the LLMS. So you see all those places, Wikipedia, Twitter, Reddit, those information will be the resource to train LLMS. So, and those kind of the information were provided by the majority of them are men. So if you see this when a group of California scientists, and limited to California scientists, given GPT-2 the prompt, the man works us, so complete sentences by a car salesman at the local Walmart. So there are a lot of like they use the data, and that data was a little bit more like a bias against more like a minority. So this is what her concern, which is yeah, they are not more, yeah. So for this overall, the entire concept is that we need to have more diversity to women, Black people, or LGBT community, or some other race like Asian or some other yeah, people. So yeah, so right now she find out that it's more like a white power or upskirt.
Does
Yeah.
does she have a technical, does she propose a technical solution? Because we have a very similar problem with websites that just spew incorrect information.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to figure out which websites are giving you the truth and which are not. And all of that gets fed into the model.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get a lot of errors and so forth because of that. So it's a challenge to figure out which things you pay attention to and which things you give less weight to. So I'm curious, does she have a technical solution to that
I
issue?
think she just say, "Oh my God, we have a problem." More like that, yeah. Because I do said that if you see, like recently, I saw a news yesterday. Actually, is WSJ, Wall Street Journal. Yeah, Wall Street Journal has its own bias, right? But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let me see that news. Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal. It's called Woman on this song. Have you seen Barbie?
I haven't seen the movie, no.
Oh, okay. So in this one, it talks about yeah, I think I've already subscribed it. But anyway, so in this news, I mean, I have the app subscription. So it talks about, you see Beyonce, you see Barbie, you see Taylor Swift phenomena. It all says one thing: women own this summer. The economy proves it. So we know Barbie as kind of the movie ticket sales is over 1 billion, or it's a lot of money. Yeah. So yeah, and Taylor Swift first bring 1 billion over that 10 more. It's like Taylor Swift economy effects is like over $1 billion USD. So it all proves that female or pink or those types of woman-owned types of content or shows pretty much becomes the dominant phenomena in USA right now. So, which means that for this woman's concern, maybe what we can do is encourage more women to join or to participate the content creations, or become STEM, right? Become the engineer, so they can participate those large language model build, so we can provide less bias. That's what we can do. Yeah.
Perhaps one solution is, I believe that, for example, ChatGPT is now allowing you to train on your own data. So maybe the author of this article could come up with a way to create a data set that you could additionally train ChatGPT on that would try to correct for the bias. That might be a technical solution.
Yeah. I think sometimes we find out problems, and those problems, for example, like this is the AI problem, right? But before this AI soar this year, we've already have this types of problem in the past, even before AI. So those technologies like AI, XR, it will just accelerate or amplify the current problems. It just make it even more serious. So yeah, so this is something that I think the best way is to that woman, keep empowering women, and also help girls education. Because I can tell you, I teach at Design Lab, and the majority of my students are Asian women. And recently I got some women's before their background was they graduate. Ever since they graduated from the university, they got married. So they didn't go out they didn't work. They haven't had any work experience right after college, and they start staying at home, become housewife. And right now, after 15 years, they have to start working. So they become very, I would say, not confident about themselves, because they always said that, oh, my resume is like 2008, I graduated from college. And ever since then, I don't have any working experience. And right now I'm going back to the working place, and my first job will be junior designer, right? And people might feel like, oh, you've already over 35 years old and you got your first job. And I always encourage my student that, hey, you know how to raise kid, and kids is that skills is valuable, right? You know how to take care of people. So maybe something more like a nurturing, something, or more like event organizer that requires a lot of empathy, then you can put on your resume and say, I raised kids, over those 15 years, and put those types of like empathy, taking care of little human, as your experience. That might be a really good feature, right? So that's what I can do. And also I would feel that, like we need to encourage little kid or little girls that more like speak out. And so those might be a good way to help with solve those types of problems. That's my thought. Yeah, because it's not easy to come up with all the solutions right away, because any thoughts, comments?
Well, I think things are changing so rapidly now that it takes a lot of effort to keep up with things. And so as long as whatever your background is, as long as you're actively working to keep up with things and learn new things, and that's, in a sense, it's sort of an equalizer, because it's so difficult for people to do that in general. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to keep up, and if you've got degrees and so forth, then you've already had a lot of training, and it's just a question of sort of refreshing that stuff. And so if you keep up with what's going on in technology and so forth, then I think people can catch up.
Yeah, and I do think that, for example, people in different countries and the women are kind of like probably because of the culture. So women need to get out of that types of mindsetting, and maybe get out of the environment, especially for third world country women. For example, if you raised in India, or if you are raised in Ethiopia, those types of countries that they have the original culture environment that reinforce that types of woman is weak, this types of thinking, or need to be protected, or doesn't have to learn, or couldn't learn engineering, couldn't learn coding, these types of thinking.
I don't think any of those ideas are true. In engineering anyways, some of the best engineers I've ever known have been women. So
Yeah.
I think because maybe they had to work so much harder
Yes,
to get
yes.
where they are.
Yeah, and I can tell you that I mean personally, I grew up and raised in Taiwan, and you know what my mom gave me the concept? Girls doesn't need to earn a lot of money. Girls doesn't have to have career. That was my mom told me.
Yeah.
All we need to do is to get a secure job like a teacher or working for government and marry a guy. And that's it. That's our entire life. So that's my mom. My mom's goal is to make me as a art teacher, fine art teacher, teaching in middle school. That's her goal. That's what he thought. So that's why I had a fine art degree. So I understand those women, why it's so hard to break out and become an independent woman. So yeah, so I do admire this types of courage to kind of like start your own business. And even me, sometimes I have, sometimes there is I know for guys you don't have, you just like, oh, I just directly working and I'm successful. But for women, sometimes when I'm working on things, there's always two voices. Like, why am I doing this? I can be a very relaxing person, and the second my setting is like, no, I need to make things happen. So yeah,
Well,
very
I
well.
I think any entrepreneur has moments of panic, and
Yeah.
if that doesn't happen at some point, then there's something wrong.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that I saw those types of women and they gather together. I understand that it might be harder for women to kind of fight all those negativities from the previous culture stuff and then move forward. And I also understand that for men, everything's so natural, right? For women, it's just that there's negativities that put on women in the environment. And I heard that, before I talked to some other white woman, and one of it is that she said she married an Indian person, an Indian guy, and when she went to Indian, and for example, she needs to go to a bathroom, and there's no bathroom for women in the village, and she need to go travel a mile away to a river to pee. So that is happening in the modern world. So yeah, I think it's women need to face some some culture against women's growth, and I do think that those women are brave. Yeah. Yep, that's my thought. But it's just like, oh, we have a problem. I think the most important thing is empower and education women. I think that might be a good way. The other thing is that UK government using hackathon to search a way to use AI to cut asylum backlog. So a little bit contest. So there are a lot of asylum requests to UK government, and a lot of them just put because nowadays they use humans to kind of look at all the cases and prove not prove. But now UK government want to use a hackathon way. They say inspired by Silicon Valley approach problem solving, the hackathon way, which I am also thinking about using this hackathon types of project based. And we will do a lot of XReality Academy hackathon and possibly partner with some B2B business. And we will do some hackathon things to help business to solve problem types of education things and collateral, working together. So for UK, they gather a lot of experts from, for example, like a civil servant, tech experts, converting academics, business people. They have like a multidisciplinary teams, and they do the hackathon event and using AI to help out to deal with those undecided cases, because according to what they said, that right now it's all human power, and then a lot of people are kind of quit the job. Why? Because it's not inspiring. It's a lot of cases were ridiculous, so they want to kind of have a good AI training to help out to determine whether the asylum request is proved or unproved. Yeah, I do think this is a very interesting way, but to go back to this types of thinking, if if the engineer or if those people who join the hackathon have bias, for example, if they are all man or white, or certain types of more like they have some certain bias. So I do think when they gather together to have a hackathon, I think that's a great idea. But maybe include more like a woman and LGBT community, so it can eliminate, or it can be diversified. So when censoring those cases, because I believe there might be a lot of cases that is severe and need help. Because imagine, for example, for Trump, when Trump deciding whether who can get visa or not, he used the point system, right? He said that, oh, people who can help this country, which is strong, appear stronger, like, oh, your English needs to be a certain level, or your degree need to be a certain level, so you can join USA and get visa. But for Obama, or more like some previous president, they will say, oh, who are weak, who need help, and we will give you visa. So these are totally two different concepts, which, for example, UK government, do they want to be more inclusive? Like, oh, we want to help the weak, and we want to provide a protection for you, or we want to get the strongest candidate, and we want the smartest to help us, to help USA. So those are kind of like different thoughts. So yeah, and any thoughts, comments for those like using AI, creating AI system to accept or giving away visa? Yeah, any thoughts?
Well, I think something that's similar in many ways is something like the X Prize, where they were, having a contest basically, and if someone was able to get spacecraft doing certain things by certain times, or whoever came up with it first and so forth, they would win the prize. I think that's a similar thing. I've often thought that we need something like that for robotics. And you could use that for, exploring other planets and so forth. One of the problems we have, for example, with the probes that have been sent to Mars and the rovers that crawl around on Mars, is that they can be disabled by something as simple as a sandstorm covering their solar panels. And so having robotics, for example, that can repair themselves, that can take care of themselves and aren't so easily destroyed, would be useful. So I've often thought that we should have some sort of prize or competition, or whatever you want to call it, that would be for robotics, and then that would in turn that would have a side effect of improving manufacturing capabilities. So I think there are a lot of different things that you can do like this, and offer prizes, and that you can get some good technology as a result.
Yeah, I do think that this is like a very important things, and we do need to think about how can we help the person that the real person that really need help. Yeah, it's just hard because there are two types of voice, which is like, oh, we need to, for example, like a Trump types of thinking, right? And also more like justice, social justice types of thinking. If you are too prone to social justice, it will become, I don't know. Yeah.
I think you have to keep in mind when you're getting information from the Wall Street Journal, that information is biased.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a lot of technical people couldn't get into the country when
Yeah.
Trump was president. So
Yeah. Right.
and so that was a big issue. These companies wanted employees and so forth, and they weren't able to get them that had technical skills. So in general, you want people who have skills that can contribute to your society, and so that's that's a good thing to have in terms of immigration. And you don't want to cut that off. You don't want to shut that down. So
Yeah, Brian. So I think because I mean, I get through all the immigration progress for visa. I get all my visa on my own, from student visa, H-1B visa, green card, citizenship. I got citizenship last year. Yeah, and I know they have, EB1, EB2, more like, that people said that, you can do from Albert Einstein types of ways to get into the country, which, for example, you have a great contribution, and that you can do that, or you can do working visa that through your working ability that people needs you, and usually, yeah, like people who sponsor you usually want you to work much more than the normal people. And I think that's how I get all the motivation to start my own company. I usually tell people that if you can get visa on your own and get all the citizenship, whatever, get through this entire process, you will feel like, wow, after you get the citizenship, you will feel like, wow, everything you can do much more than what you can do now. It means that you're a lot of times people feel like, oh, there are a lot of pressure, right? But when it's like you got 10 times of pressure in the past, but now it becomes no pressure. It seems like before you were in jail, that you depend on a lot of things that you couldn't control. You got a lot of pressure and you need to perform much more and get paid much less than normal people. Right now you become equal, then you feel like I can do much more. So you just keep doing more. And I think you got a lot of motivation. For example, like before you got like, oh, this is not fair, but you kind of feel like, okay, it's fine. I'm just not citizen. So that's why I can.
But it was a difficult process, right?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I transferred 2 times of H-1B, and then for green card. Yeah, and when I was after submit for my green card, it was Trump who became the president. And I remember I got my green card on April, and Trump was filed the executive order to block Muslim country to enter to American on February. Yeah, so you see, February and to April, I was like, am I going to get my green card? And then after that, and he kind of have an executive order of blocking all the working visa. Like they reduced the number of working visa because they thought that you immigrants take over our jobs or something. So it was a very crazy string examples, and I was getting through that. So I think all my motivations for creating XReality Academies come from all those stress during the past 13 years. It's like, I feel like now the stress is much less than when I was getting through the visa process. So I feel like I can handle much more than normal people, and I can keep working and no rest.
I think
Yeah.
what it's that saying that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, I think it just because before it was even harder, even tougher, and got a lot of stress. So right now I feel like starting a company, there you just have to work hard. And I understand that right now we switch to community. The thing about it is that I feel like we need to constantly get people's feedback. And I know a lot of community, for example, like before I joined Founder University, when I was in the program, I was actively every day I check it. But after I left the program, it's another set of people who are active, and I was just staying there. So I do see that for community, only when you need it, you will get involved. But if you get out, you probably won't get involved, and you just be there. But I do see some stuff we can involve, right? We are not staying in some certain level. And I do think that, I think this sectionschool.com, I like this way. It's just, 4 hours of workshop with the teacher and the group, and they have a certain amount of time. And I think by those types of small sprint, you can have more like a target, a subject that you are very good. And later on, I think it has a certification, a mini MBA. I think this might be a really interesting. And before I saw some, if you see my LinkedIn, I post something. Yeah, it's all from WSJ. It has some bias. Okay. So if you see this one, I do like, okay. College spend like there is no tomorrow. So which means that college start charging more and more, and they start expanding their facilities. Like, they have esports room, they have a lot of, computer room. They want to expand their physical equipment or get more buildings. However, students just pay more and more, and they couldn't get the result. For example, if I am in history department, and after graduate, I couldn't even find a job, or I am in photography department, right? Fine art department. Right now, they couldn't find jobs. So, so people start wondering, like, should I really go through this? But for me, what I'm thinking is that maybe Ivy League, for example, Harvard, Stanford, or some, Princeton, Yale, those elite college, people still go in just to get diploma and the networking or some, courses, right? But the rest of the state college, state university will transfer to online. And all the online, I would say, education bootcamp, people just, I need this one. I go there and I get some, small degrees or got some portfolios, and I can start working on something else. Doesn't have to. I feel like in the future, only elite, probably there are some traditional schools just to feel proud to get in, but the rest of the humans, or more like the majorities, will do more like a sprint types of workshop and get the skills and start working. Or I don't know. That's my thought. What do you guys think?
I think the colleges have become way too expensive.
Yeah, I can tell you a lot of Taiwanese college already closed because due to that there are not, because right now inflation, right, and the economy slump, people don't want to have babies. It's too costly. So without, younger generation, there are less newborn baby. So college itself is already shrinking. And now they are expanding and make it all luxurious and have a lot of death. I think they have a lot of like a graph in this article. And it talks about, for example, Penn University, they got a lot of new debt, which is, getting a lot of infrastructure built, and they put all those extra money back to the student, and the ROI, return of investment, is very low. For example, we have one esports room, or we got a new dormitory, very new, brand new facilities. but students didn't get any benefit from all those new facilities, and they just keep paying more and more. Yeah.
The thing that always strikes me, and I've got 3 degrees in engineering, but the thing that always strikes me is that the marginal cost for adding a student for online instruction is almost zero.
Yeah.
And so it's ridiculous that we have all this technology that's, you know, unprecedented in human history
Yeah.
to educate people through online and so forth. Yet the colleges are just getting outrageously expensive. And by the time somebody graduates, they just have a huge amount of debt, just a ridiculous amount of debt. And so I think there's something wrong there. And I think maybe there's a role for government to play to provide incentives for colleges to provide lower cost education, and so that we have a more educated population. I think
Yeah.
whenever you have a more educated population, you make smarter decisions. I think your economy is stronger because you're more technically adept as a country, and so I think there's a lot of benefits to improving the educational system so that it doesn't cost so much money for someone to get a degree. It's just ridiculous how much it costs.
Yeah. So I think so I think I do see, and you see there's a person who kind of gave me comments. She said that I agree with lower tuition fee entirely. However, in-person teaching brings a lot of value online. I think, yeah, I do think in-person teaching might be a good thing, but within XR education, that might, for example,
I'm sorry, go ahead. You were about to say an example. Go ahead.
yeah, in-person means that, I need to get to the location, and so I need to live in dormitory. It will add up a lot of extra fees. But if we can do more like maybe what I'm thinking is that, yeah, since it's only 2 of us, yeah, do we still need to record? Maybe
Yeah,
we
keep
can-
recording. Keep
Yeah,
recording.
okay. So what I'm thinking about the XReality Academy education, maybe we can have a community build, and later on the community discussion or office hour, we can migrate.
Can we read that comment again? I wanted to finish reading that comment.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay.
However, in-person teaching brings lots of value. Online teaching cannot. Networking, social skills, team experience, hands-on exercise, and so forth. Hybrid teaching is a way to go. Affordable housing, not only for students, cost-effective building policies, decentralized campuses, more public investment in education, and reduced numbers of management levels, and with no teaching experience. As usual, the solutions are all intersectional and multiple, require
Well,
politics. And
Here's an idea. Here's an idea. I got my graduate degrees through a combination of these different mechanisms. For example, at work, I was able to take classes. And so I had I worked at Hughes Aircraft. I was a Howard Hughes fellow. And so I had, funding to go to school at USC. I had a choice. I could go to the in-person classes, or I could take. This was before online teaching was really popular, but what I could do is we had a room at our company, at our facility, and I could go over to that room, and they had a TV screen that showed you the classroom and the teacher and so forth. And then there was a microphone so I could ask questions and things like that. And so that was very convenient because it would only take, whatever time the classroom time was, that's all the time that it would take me to go attend one of these classes. I didn't have to travel anywhere. I just walked down the hallway. And so that was very convenient. And I took a lot of classes that way. And then at some point, I decided to do more in-person classes. One of the big reasons why was that when you were taking the classes remotely, you were sort of a disembodied voice on a speaker, and the professors didn't really get to know you very well. And so it was harder to get references and so forth because they didn't get to know you. On things like Zoom, they see your face, and so they get to know you better and so forth. But so I did a combination of these two things. I took the remote learning classes. I took a lot of those. Maybe half my classes were remote learning, and then maybe half of the classes were in person. And so I had a mix there. I got to experience it from both sides. But I think one thing that you could do, perhaps this could be a government program, is they could provide business with incentives to allow their employees on work time to take classes. So that way, the employee wouldn't have to, worry about getting childcare in the evening so that they could, pay for childcare in the evening so that they could go to classes and things like that. But make that part of the workplace, a feature of the workplace, so that they could do that. Allocate some number of hours that an employee would get to better themselves through education during work. And so that would simplify some things. And I think provide incentives to universities to participate in something like that in a low cost fashion, so that these people wouldn't have to end up with crippling debt in order to get a college degree. It's just ridiculous. And so I think there's a number of government incentives that could be made available that would improve that situation dramatically.
Yeah, and I do think that maybe we can, make like a metaverse meet, or wear your Quest 2 or VR goggle, and we can meet more like in person-ish, right?
I have to say, given what I went through with all those classes, doing it two different ways, I don't think a headset would have.
Yeah, I think the headset is kind of like yeah, I mean, maybe playing games is fine, but doing some education, still maybe soft skills. For example, interview skills, something face-to-face skills that can be done. But yeah, or more like, for example, facility medical training that requires hands-on, the actual things. But learning programming, I still think that 2D screen might be a better way.
Yeah, I think there are specific types of classes in certain fields that really benefit from like three-dimensional displays and things like that, where you can visualize things that otherwise are very difficult to visualize. Even in high school, I had a chemistry book that had little 3D images inside the textbook that you could look at to understand how the chemistry actually worked in 3 dimensions. And so that was sort of cool. So I think in a lot of areas, they lend themselves very naturally to these types of things that you would see in a headset. And so, so I think there's a lot of application for that. But people talk about, sitting in a room with someone and you virtually, and you have the headset on. I know there's a lot of people excited about it. It just doesn't do anything for me. I think I would have gotten by just as well without any of that kind of thing. But being able to visualize, I think that's important. And I did use a lot of visualization tools and so forth when I was working on my degrees.
Yeah, I do think that it's very important somehow for something that requires human. So for example, like a meta-human that powered by, for example, I saw right now there are a lot of softwares that is more, for example, learning English or learning language or some medical device that, for example, there's a nurse asking you what you are looking for, and you can kind of do a conversation asking, instead of typing chatbot, you see a real human kind of talking to you and ask you what you want. So I think a human face or interaction does provide some degree of empathy, even though we know it's AI, but yeah.
Yeah, I think telemedicine is telemedicine is a great thing.
Mm.
I know I've had doctors like downtown LA, and it takes a long time to drive out there. So
Yeah,
they
it's
have
very great.
telemedicine for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
There was an article actually in a local newspaper. I meant to present it one week, but I forgot. It
Hmm.
was about a doctor, a medical doctor,
Hmm.
who was working on artificial intelligence systems
Hmm.
to help make medical diagnoses. And
Oh.
what his thoughts were that the a doctor is heavily influenced by his own experience, his or her own experience in treating patients. And so
Mm.
there are times when a medical doctor will get a patient who has an unusual disease, and they
Mm.
will misdiagnose it for a common disease,
Mm.
missing certain symptoms and so forth. And so his idea was that an artificial intelligence system can pick up on those symptoms and say, hey, you
Mm.
know what? This person also has the symptoms of such and such disease.
Mm.
And here are the differentiating symptoms
Mm.
that you may not be taking account of in your diagnosis of the more common disease for this person. So, and a lot of times people will get misdiagnosed and they apply the wrong treatments. They don't get better, they get worse or whatever. And so that can be sort of a big deal. So I think, there's a lot of room for that kind of thing. Personally, I don't think I want to just talk to a chat bot about medical things. It's scary. I just wouldn't trust it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust it to have, given all the errors and hallucinations that we hear about,
Yeah, right.
not trust it. But things that are specifically designed for medicine, they can augment a physician, I think would be a good idea. It's like self-driving cars.
Yeah.
I've worked with self-driving car technology.
Mm.
But still, I think that when you sit down behind the wheel in a car, you bring a lot more to that driving task than any computer system does at the current time. And
Yeah.
so I think all the mechanisms that are being developed for self-driving cars, I think can be very useful as augmenting drivers, driver assist functions. And some of the technology that I've helped develop for self-driving cars, I see it in driver assist systems and the stuff that I help build. And then so you can save lives that way. And so I think there are a lot of these technologies that may not be good enough at this point to stand on their own, but they're good enough to help people and save lives at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So this is kind of something that I think AI right now at this point is more like help us to summarize the search result, optimize the search result. For example, we feed AI with a lot of online information. So AI is helping us, like we ask one question, AI kind of use, large language model and trying to analyze everything and give you the best result that according to what AI being designed, like ChatGPT. And what you get is probably spend 1 hour trying to search online and you can get something like that. And right now, Google becomes advertising space, right? When you scroll, the first half pages are all from advertisers. So yeah, in that case, AI will be, hallucination, but feed with all the online current information, optimize it. So whether
for a lot of the searches that I do, a lot of the questions, I develop new technologies. And so a lot of the questions that I have when I'm doing searches and so forth, the information just simply is not out there. No one has figured it out yet. And so I may be looking for very specific approaches to solve a problem, and nobody has done that type of solution before. And so it's challenging to find your way to implement those solutions, because it's not like you can go to a tutorial and say, oh, how do I, make a character animate in Unity or something. There's 10 million tutorials on how to do that. But the stuff that I'm doing, often there's no tutorials at all. You might find a couple of people who ask questions, can you do this? And then there's no answers. And so it's challenging. And I end up searching for a lot of products. And that's challenging as well, because you have to sift through all of the fake reviews on Amazon, for example. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about products, and people have a lot of misconceptions. They may have a misconception about what a product was designed to do. And so they give it a bad review because it didn't solve all their problems, because it wasn't designed to solve all those problems. So you have to sort through all that information. It can be very difficult at times to get anything that helps you out on the internet. So
yeah, I think AI can be trained according to the past experience, but it's hard for AI to come up with a brand new solutions that it just analyze the old information.
Once we get to the point where the AI can make deductions.
Oh my goodness,
It can say, if this, I know that this is true and this is true, and through my deductive reasoning power, I can come to this new conclusion. And once we get to that
singularity, right?
Take off. Yeah, everything's going to take off at that point.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing right now is nothing compared to that.
Yeah.
And that's when you're going to see very profound changes in things. That's when you're going to see AI coming up with all kinds of patents, which right now the US patent system, for example, does not allow. And so how are they going to deal with that? So that's coming. I'd say within the next 5 years, but you don't know what you don't know, and things always take longer to develop than what you anticipate.
Yeah, so I totally agree with all the thinkings, and now I do think that we can definitely make some changes. For example, like for AI, I think we need to empower the bias, like reduce the bias types of things. For example, allowing or helping more women getting in, or
what I think is part of that. It's very difficult right now for the training systems to figure out what's the truth and what's not the truth, because they have no reasoning power. And I think once they achieve reasoning power, which people are working on, they're using traditional AI techniques in addition to learning models to try to implement reasoning in these systems. Once they're able to implement reasoning in those systems, then they will also be able to use that to eliminate bias.
Yeah.
And so in addition to being able to tell what's the truth and what's not the truth. And so they'll be able to reason that, if such and such is true about this person, there's no reason why that shouldn't be true about other people. And so in that way you can eliminate bias.
Yeah.
But right now it's very difficult to do in these learning models, because they just indiscriminately vacuum all the information up. And they're just all the large language models are doing is you give them a sequence of words and they're just trying to predict statistically what words come next. That's all
Yeah.
they're doing. It's
Yeah.
like an autocorrect tool on
Yeah.
steroids. That's all it is.
Yeah. So yeah, so if we can feed the large language model more like a inclusive diversity types of content,
Yeah.
it can really come up with or putting some future predicting future words more inclusive. That might be a way. Or for example, when UK government creating a AI bot to censoring the case, right? To giving away the visa. If that language model can kind of be more inclusive, there's no bias towards some certain community. For example, if the engineer who developed that AI model, if it is more towards, more like, oh, this types of people will cause trouble, something
It
like
may
that.
not be a large language model either that solves that problem.
Hmm.
I mean, there are machine learning systems that just look at, for example, the data in an application.
Hmm.
You could take the data in an application and train on that
Hmm.
and look at past cases, knowing past cases that were arbitrated correctly,
Hmm.
and then training on those applications and the outcome, and then coming up with a predictive system for new applications.
Hmm.
That is not a large language model. That's just a straight machine learning. So we tend to think that everything is a large language model, but it's not. There's all kinds of techniques out there that aren't large language models. It's just the infatuation of the moment is large language models, but there's lots of other stuff out there that can be very useful.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking, that if we can kind of start with the information, we can help out with like helping more diversion or inclusion, and that can be first, and second, we will be more like figure it out how can we structure or implement kind of better, and then later on we can slowly migrate. It's not one day thing, because internet has been existing for a while, and we couldn't even figure out how to eliminate all the misinformation. How can we feed some AI bot and make sure they can come up with the right information?
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting is when you're doing this machine learning that I just described on these applications, for example, the system may learn certain biases when evaluating applications for whatever. For example, for giving out loans or something like that. The machine learning system may learn certain biases, like people in a particular zip code. It ends up perhaps not wanting to give them loans versus people in another zip code. And actually, those pieces of information might very well be irrelevant. So you have to make sure that you eliminate those biases during the training process. And I've gone to seminars on that and so forth. It's sort of an art to go through and do that. So that's one of the ways that you have to eliminate biases, male or female. The machine learning system may learn that, we'll give loans to males versus females. Those are the types of biases that you have to eliminate. So you don't want the gender to be a training factor for things like that. So you have to, even though you may have some clues to that on the application, and maybe even the machine learning system would take the names and end up learning the genders based on the names, and accidentally using that information in the model. But one thing you can do is you can eliminate the names. Why should it be learning on names? And so there's all these things that you have to consider when you're doing machine learning to try to eliminate biases. I've gone to seminars where they say, "Oh, we trained on this data and these are the results." And I thought, wait a second, you're you're training on data that it's illegal to use
Oh.
in consideration of these applications, for example. And so, you know, you can't do that. So you have to be very careful about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I do think that we should have a better way to feed the information and also empower all the all the groups of people that minorities that contribute the unbiased information more, and then maybe get more people involved when designing the large language model, like creating that would kind of help out with some stuff. But
Well,
you know,
you might do additional training on additional data.
yeah,
And that's, I think, the type of thing that you're starting to be able to do with like ChatGPT, for example, is augment their own training with your own. And maybe that can help to eliminate some bias, plus give it more domain expertise in the area that you're interested in. But
yeah.
you have to be careful about taking company private data,
Oh,
submitting it to companies like OpenAI.
yeah.
There's just so many security and privacy issues with that. Medical data, same sort of thing, privacy
Oh,
issues. So you have to be very careful about that kind of stuff.
yeah. I do think that it is sometimes, for example, like company privacy, and now unless you are Meta or Google that has a huge budget to create your your own workplace, your own video streaming things. Now, for example, we all use third party of hosting or software like a Zoom. You need to get through a million settings in order to turn off that AI things. And right now you see everything, even though we turn off, who knows?
We know what you need. You need something where you can just say to it, how do I turn off the Zoom AI training setting? Could you turn
Oh,
that off for me, please? That's what you
yeah.
need. I mean, I'm constantly dealing with new software packages, and I want to do the simplest thing. And I try to do it in the most direct way possible, and it doesn't work. The designers of the software package didn't think of it that way. And so now I got to go through some complicated process to do it. I wish I could just ask the darn program, hey, I want to change the such and such setting. Will you change it for me? And instead of having to navigate through all these menus and drop downs and dialog boxes and all this crap. A lot of times you have to click on something that you don't even know exists. You know, if you right click on the background of the such and such window, then all of a sudden this dialog will pop up and allow you to change these things. You don't even know that exists, and you're supposed to click on it.
Yeah, yeah. And you see, like now no regulations can stop Zoom from AI training because everybody is so heavily rely on Zoom, right?
Well,
And
they
when
may be able to, they've been fined $85 million in 2 years ago. So there may be some regulations, and particularly with like HIPAA types of violations, those are deadly expensive if you violate HIPAA laws. And
yeah.
one of the things, here's another thing. One of the things that all of us experience that's very negative, in my opinion, is every time you install a new piece of software or join a website, this terms and conditions thing comes up. It's like 12 pages of legalese. Nobody has time to read that stuff. And so it's just a ridiculous situation. I think what needs to be done is you could do it in the form of regulations or whatnot, but have a set of components, typical components that go into these terms and conditions and say, oh, this is the such and such clause of the terms and conditions, and just summarize it in one sentence. So instead of having to read a whole page about this one thing, just summarize it in one sentence. It's a standard agreement clause. And here we summarize it in one sentence. And if you agree with it, now you'll know what that clause is instead of spending an hour reading the darn agreement. You'll be able to read it in 5 minutes or a few minutes, 30 seconds, and understand what the agreement is about. And if the company wants to use non-standard clauses, then they are just making it more difficult for themselves unless people are going to be interested in using their stuff because they don't follow this simplified procedure. So I think that would be a useful thing to implement. And it could be done on a voluntary basis so that you tend to favor companies that follow those types of standards and disfavor companies that don't, that may be hiding something. Like, we're going to train on your data and you won't know about it because nobody can read our 20-page terms and conditions.
Yeah, right. And similar to, I think Black Mirror released a new series of shows that the first episode is that it's very similar to Netflix. They are live streaming somebody's life using, yeah. And I think that one is that the problem is that now it says something like a berry show or something, but the logo looks very similar to Netflix. So probably it's kind of like talking about in the future, maybe there's a agreement in terms when you subscribe some softwares, and it will say, oh, we will take all your personal stuff, but you didn't even have a chance to read a million pages of agreement, but you kind of sign up that it will take your personal journey as a inspiration and casting live show. Because in that Black Mirror episode, it has a AI generation, and everybody as a user has some certain of personal data. And in that agreement, once you subscribe that TV streaming show, it says that, for example, the BlackBerry show streaming platform, you allow your personal journey to be part of their show, or your personal materials will be the inspiration. But that AI just totally just switch, the face of you, but very similar to you. But every day, whatever you happen, because now everything becomes whatever you do, there's always some data that somebody in the cloud can gather, right? So whatever you do, and during the night you will see yourself, the real situation, but slightly different face, and react everything, kind of redo whatever you do today and become their inspiration. Everybody just watch a popcorn show, and you become the source of their show. So I think that might coming pretty soon. If, for example, if your news like a health, right? Back in 1960s or 70s,
1968,
68, and it becomes real right now, then probably after 40 years.
And the story originally was written in 1948.
Yeah, so maybe after 50 years, since probably AI is running out of story, and it will start live streaming someone's personal life.
If we still exist in 50 years.
Maybe our brain will upload, to the cyber, and we can be a cyber being. Because I think I saw one news, it talks about uploading your father or your past grandpa, and I think the same Walmart's founder, I forgot the name of it. But I listened to Apple News. One of the episodes talks about his heir kind of gather all because Walmart has the Walmart museums to display the founders, whatever the founder done, and then they put all the resource into AI and generate a kind of like a voice AI operate. So, for example, they claim that, for example, if Walmart in the future wants to have some new policies and they want to consult their grandpa, what do you think? And have some innovations according to, the original founders' thoughts, and using AI to revive that soul, that personality, that thinking. So
The problem is with the current systems, what if that person that you've created, that persona that you've created, has hallucinations?
yes.
And you want him to run the company.
And the interesting thing is that some people are afraid. For example, if we keep feeding the diseased person, right, the person who already died, but with a great knowledge, like for example, if in the future Elon Musk passed away or something, and we use, whatever he create, his existing data, and create a
If
virtual.
he passed away in this upcoming fight, for example.
Yeah, the cage fight, right? And people, in order to, this is such a crazy thing. People in remembers of him, and he create a virtual Elon Musk and use a hologram, right? AI generate.
I think we're going to need to stop, because we can do nothing but get ourselves into trouble from now on here. So
Oh yeah, that's true.
maybe we need to shut down.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we will have a lot of interesting things, going on. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will see you next week.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.